Hey, welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you're doing well. Today I thought we would talk about why I think the Jaeger Lecoultre Memovox is one of the best values watches in the vintage watch world. Now before we get into that, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you haven't checked out our website, the link will be in the description. Go check it out. I'm sure you're gonna like it. So in this video, what I thought we would do is I would give you a little bit of a history of the Memovox, giving you the different calibers, all that kind of stuff. And then I would go into why I think it's some of the best value in the vintage watch world and give you my opinions on it. So the Jaeger Lecoultre Memovox started in 1949, where JLC made their first caliber, the caliber 489. And it was called the wrist alarm at the time. So on the dial where the alarm function is, it says wrist alarm as opposed to saying Memovox. And Memovox actually means voice of memory, so it's in Latin. So it's actually a striking mechanism that hits the side of the case when you set the alarm for a specific time, and it reminds you to do something throughout the day. So in 1949, the movement was developed, and then in 1950 and 51 was when they brought the movement to market, and it sold really well. It was under the name wrist alarm, as I said, instead of Memovox at the time. And there were many, many dial variations, which made it a very unique watch. You're not going to have the same Memovox as the person sitting next to you, which is one of the reasons why I think it's great for your collection. It has two crowns. It's a very iconic two-crowned, very recognizable watch. Two crowns, one to set the time of the watch and the other to set the alarm function. Obviously, you're going to wind the alarm function crown in order to power the movement, so that when the hour hand reaches that alarm indicator, that's when the striking mechanism starts, and it will remind you of the task that you need to complete. So this sold all the way up until 1953, and then JLC released the caliber 814, which had the same design. There were some design changes, but it really was focused on efficiency of the production of the movement as well as the ease of service. So they noticed that there were a few things that they needed to change in order to service it and could produce it a little bit better. So they made those adjustments. There was also the K814, which included a shock protection to the movement, and that was sold after the caliber 489. Now there was a transitional movement, the caliber 601, which was produced in very few numbers and is considered a transitional caliber. It's extremely rare, so if you ever find one of those in really great condition, hold on to it, because obviously that's going to increase in value like crazy. Then in 1956, JLC produced their first automatic bumper movement, which was the caliber 815, which was the no date version, and the 825, which was the date version. Now this was a very successful movement. It was actually used in the JLC Deep Sea alarm, which is an extremely collectible piece. Finding ones that are in all original condition as well as being in good condition is really, really rare. So there are only 950 pieces made of it, which obviously makes it a really, really great watch to have. And then it was also used in the Polaris Master Compressor, which is another very iconic watch from JLC. Yeah, it kind of basically took off from there, and that was that movement was used for quite a while compared to the other movements, up until 64, where they made another caliber, the caliber 910 and 911, which were manual wind pieces as opposed to the bumper movement, which was replacing that 814 movement. So you have, at that time, you had the 815, which was 815 and 825, which was the bumper movement, and then in 64 you had the 910 and 911, which was the manual wind movement that was used by JLC. Then in 1969, which seems like everything happens in the 60s. I feel like, you know, went to the moon, all that kind of stuff. So in 1969, JLC came out with their caliber 916, which was the first fully bi-directional winding movement for the Memovox. So it used that bi-directional winding mechanism to power the movement, as opposed to being a bumper movement, which is only 180 degrees, and as opposed to manual wind, which means you're going to wind it. And this movement basically took off for JLC. This was used all the way up to 2005 with their master compressor series in 2005. So from 1969 to 2005, the Memovox movements really were unchanged. Obviously the manual wind movements were, I guess, taken out of commission, but this automatic movement was used for a very, very long time, almost 35 years, 36 years. So obviously there's been a progression with the movements, but like I said, it's kind of remained true to its first form. And there's a lot of variations, which is something that's really great because, you know, it's very unique. Some notable wares, one of the most notable wares of a Memovox was Charlie Chaplin. There is a picture of the engraving of his Memovox. Obviously, iconic actor, really, really amazing history of him. And it's really cool that he decided to wear this wrist alarm. I wonder, maybe he was using it for, you know, his set, making sure he was on set or something like that. But cool thing to add to the watch. You know, I'm wearing a Memovox. Did you know Charlie Chaplin wore a Memovox? It's a cool conversation piece because then you can get into movies and all that kind of stuff. So that's the history of the watch. Now I want to tell you why I like it. The first thing is it's from one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best Swiss manufacturers. JLC has created movements for many, many notable companies like Vacheron Constantin, and I think you're going to have a lot of heritage with this piece on your wrist. The second thing is it is an in-house movement. I know there's a lot of people that really focus on the technical aspects of watches as opposed to the design aspects, but if you take it from a technical approach, JLC, these Memovox movements are in-house, and it's a striking mechanism. So a lot of the times you want to have some type of complication that's a little bit different than the person next to you. And one of the complications that I really like is the minute repeater, just like I'm sure many of you like. And again, the minute repeater is a striking mechanism. So instead of having to pay that much for a striking mechanism and a minute repeater, you can get a striking mechanism for an alarm function in a JLC Memovox. Also, I've said this before in this video, I think the fact that there were multiple dial variations of this watch makes it very unique and allows you to have a collection of Memovoxes that someone else may not have. So I think it's a way to differentiate your collection from another person, which is, I think, something that we all try to do. We all try to have our own unique taste in our collection, and I think having a different dial variation of the Memovox is the perfect way to do that. I also think it's very well priced in the vintage watch world. You know, vintage watch prices have gone up as people have become more knowledgeable about watches. People, you know, the prices have absolutely skyrocketed, but I think the Memovoxes have become kind of like a sweet spot for collectors. It's enough that you kind of have to save up for, but it's not so much that it's unattainable. I also think it's a very wearable movement. The dial size is readable, and it's not going to be something that's going to go over the sides of your wrists, and it's not going to be too small so that you're thinking that perhaps it's not for you. One of the things that I must say is that it's becoming a lot harder to find a Memovox in all original condition. A lot of the times the crowns have been replaced, the dials have been refinished. So there are specific things that you need to pay attention to when thinking about purchasing a Memovox. There are common things within the watch world, but make sure that you do enough research to know the difference between you know, a refinished dial or aftermarket hands, or aftermarket crowns. These are things that you must consider before buying them, because you don't want to find out later that it's not all original, or it's not in the condition that you want it to be in. There is one caveat with this watch. I would recommend not wearing it to the airport, because if that wrist alarm goes off, everyone's going to freak out, and it's not going to be the best time for you at all. So that's all I have to say about the Memovox. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, subscribe, like I said in the beginning of the video. And if you've made it this far into the video, subscribe, like this video if you wouldn't mind. Let me know what you think about the Memovox. I would love to hear your opinions on it. If you have a Memovox, feel free to send us some pictures on our Instagram or on our website. And on that note, I hope you guys have a nice rest of your day.